Yes, the president is bringing back those packed rallies, announcing his first one will be held next Friday in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's Friday, June 19th, the day that commemorates the end of slavery, known as Juneteenth, in a city where one of the worst racial violence episodes in U.S. history took place in 1921, when a mob of white people attacked and killed at least 24 African-American residents and injured thousands more, burning down and destroying more than 35 square blocks of black people's homes and businesses. A 2001 commission determined it's possible as many as 300 people were killed in those attacks. Think the president didn't know this? And the city hasn't exactly put incidents of racism behind it since. Just this week, Tulsa police released body cam footage of an incident that's now under investigation after 2 black teenagers were arrested last week for jaywalking, with a white police officer forcing one of them to the ground and staying on top of him as he shouted he could not breathe. Tulsa was also one of the cities where the police reality series Live PD was filmed before it was canceled this week. But at least some in the Trump administration are able to recognize when they're going to be on the wrong side of history, like Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley, who took part in that photo op of Trump with the Bible in Lafayette Square after protesters were pepper sprayed to clear the way.
I should not have been there. My presence in that moment and in that environment created a perception of the military involved in domestic politics. As a commissioned, uniformed officer, it was a mistake that I have learned from, and I sincerely hope we all can learn from it.
I sincerely hope so, too. As you likely know, among the biggest changes those protesters have been calling for has been to reallocate some of the money in police budgets around the country. Among the supporters of that issue here in Boston, City Councilor Andrea Campbell, who chairs the council's Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Councilor, it's good to see you as always. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, and it's great to see you, Jim.
So on Sunday, the mayor said he would reallocate some funds from the police budget, but with no specifics. Your response was, that's not enough. What is enough? What kind of change are you looking for?
So first and foremost, obviously, everything we're pushing for now is after witnessing the painful and traumatic murder of George Floyd and so many others. And so it's sad that we have sort of come to this. Black folks and black residents in particular here in Boston have understood that these systems we're talking about, not just policing, criminal justice, housing, banking, have marginalized and oppressed and excluded black residents for a long time. And so the topic at hand is police brutality and policing reform. And there's a lot we can do. We have been pushing for reforms that would make the department more transparent and saying all relevant data, including stop and frisk data, where we purchase things, our budget numbers, our diversity numbers, make that public, put it on a dashboard. Be more accountable, establish a civilian review board. How do we hold our officers accountable when something goes wrong? We do not have something great in place right now. On the budget, absolutely. Let's look at reallocating money. Start with the $60 million overtime budget and put it into community-based organizations that are doing work with the root causes of violence, youth jobs. The list is long as to what we can do. But the time now is to develop a specific action plan, and that's my expectation from the mayor.
Are you looking for the whole $60 million in overtime to be reallocated out of the police budget to other social and community services?
I think that's a topic of discussion right now. And so we had some hearing. Absolutely. Why not? I'll say this. I was just talking to some constituents around the sort of defunding language. And when we talk about defunding in the concept or in the context of schools, for example, it doesn't sound so radical. I think with the police department, it does because people have different meanings for it. I do not mean abolish our police department. Defunding does not mean that for me. What it means is we need to think critically around, is policing the model we want to use when eradicating health disparities, preventing violence, getting at poverty, creating greater economic opportunity in schools? No, we don't want to do it through our police department. We want to do it through our health commission. We want to do it through other organizations on the ground. And so how do we take resources from this department in particular and particularly the inefficient spending, right? And redirect that to programs and initiatives we know to work, and we can do more. Even youth jobs, we just had a hearing on that. We could do more for youth jobs, and so we need to start and be really courageous and bold.
Do you and your colleagues have the votes to reject a budget from the mayor if the mayor doesn't address these priorities?
I don't know yet. I mean, based on what I'm hearing from my colleagues in the council meetings and discussions, everyone is for reallocation of resources and redirecting them for different purposes. We have a meeting coming up
But the
soon.
devil's in the details.
Exactly. And I will say our council president, Kim Janey, is bringing us together with the mayor to have these discussions with the hopes that we can all move in the same direction.
You know, Andrea Campbell, the mayor said, I think it was on Wednesday, he commented that the city council has adopted the police budget the last 2 years unanimously. If it turns out the people of Boston in your district are better served by that $60 million not going to the police budget, but other things that you listed a minute ago, why did it take the murder of George Floyd to get action?
So I think, those comments have sort of rubbed me the wrong way. And I'll be explicit as to why. The council, unlike our state colleagues, has very limited authority with respect to our review process. It's been a conversation of discussion for a long time, which is we do not have the ability, like our state colleagues, to take the budget line by line, to move things around, to move numbers up and move numbers down at the same time. We have an up or down vote on a whole entire operating budget. So when I'm pushing for things in the budget that my constituents want, so more money for youth development programs, that was one of my biggest initiatives, more money for our health centers and our community health centers, the list is long. When I get some of those things, I don't get all of those things. So I am put in a really hard place where I have to compromise, right?
But with all due respect, Counselor, if the only tool you have, you and your colleagues statutorily, is to reject the budget and force the mayor to the table, isn't that the tool you should embrace?
Absolutely. And I've done that. I mean, on the education budget, there was 1 year I was the sole counselor to vote no. And subsequent years voted no again to say the strategy here isn't working. In my hearings with respect to the Committee on Public Safety, I've held hearings on the money and said, how much money is going to violence prevention? How much money are we using for community-based organizations who are addressing poverty? What are our accountability metrics? Who's tracking this? And I was just really shocked and disappointed that some of that information wasn't available. So we're using all of our tools in our arsenal in a very strong mayor city to do the best we can to advocate. But there's a reason we have a strong mayor city and why leadership from the mayor is so critical. We have to work in partnership with him. We're going to force and push him as much as we can. But he's the one in negotiation rooms with the unions. We cannot go in there legally. And he has the authority to do some of these things with a stroke of a pen. And so we're going to push and we're going to advocate as best we can and to work in collaboration because that's what our residents want.
You know, Andrea Campbell, you haven't shied away from talking about the fact that your twin brother died in the custody of the Department of Correction when he was awaiting trial, other family members involved in the criminal justice system. How much does that affect your worldview on what it should look like, what law enforcement should look like, what criminal justice should look like?
So I just had goosebumps go through me because today is my birthday, right? It would have been my twin brother's birthday as well. And of course, I think about him and the tragedy and the circumstances under which he died in the criminal justice system. And I say all of these systems need to be reimagined and created anew. And that is not just the policing system, not just how many people are incarcerated and largely black and brown. We were just having a conversation around school police officers in our schools and what does it mean to criminalize our young people at an early age versus getting them mental health supports or other supports. Andre was one of those folks. He was smarter than me, and yet he had a school system that failed him, right? He was criminalized early on through our school systems. And so I am passionate around transforming these systems. It is personal for me. But then professionally, I just know we can do better given what we're seeing. I mean, even if we're excellent, I always say we can always do better. And the policing system, the housing system, the banking system for far too long has failed communities of color. And now is the time to do something different.
Counselor, lastly, you don't just have to change laws and change budgets, at least in my estimation. You also have to change minds. The other night, Monica Collins Grant was with me, who runs Violence in Boston, was behind. Monica Cannon Grant was with me, and she runs Violence in Boston, and she obviously organized that fabulous peaceful rally at Franklin Park. The last question I asked her is, what reforms would it take for you to trust the police? And here's what she had to say.
Jim, I'm a black woman in America. I will never trust the police. When you think about the origin of the police department, their origin was never to be created to protect and serve me. It was to catch and return slaves. I love to read and I love to pay attention. And so there are the systematic racism that is entrenched in that system will never make me comfortable enough to believe that they can protect me.
Counselor, what do you say to Monica and people who share her view?
So for folks who are not black in America, I say, listen, right? Monica is hitting on a critical piece, which is the foundation of this country was founded on the idea that black people, that blackness was lesser, was inferior, and less human. And when we see cases like George Floyd or other acts like that, racism plays a role. The value of the black life does not matter. And so we have to get at what that underlying foundation is, that sort of underbelly, the racism, the violence in this country that has been perpetuated against black people through slavery, lynching, Jim Crow, you name it, our criminal justice system. We have to get at that. And I think we don't do enough listening to Monica and other advocates who say this distrust is real. It didn't come out of anywhere. It's not imagined. It's because of the historical context. And so I have been pushing this city to talk about race and racism. As council president, people thought, well, she's bringing the council through a racial equity training over 6 months. Okay. Mm-hmm. It was to get at what Monica's talking about, and mainly for white residents, white allies, white accomplices to understand what we're talking about, so that when we say defund, they don't say that's radical. No, it's not. If a system continues to murder black people the way in which it does, to devalue our humanity. And now as the mother of 2 young boys, a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, I am often afraid, of course, as to what will happen to them in the future if we do not get this right now. And I cannot wait for another person's life to be lost before we suddenly understand it in this government system, before white residents understand it. So take a step back, listen to Monica. She is doing incredible work. Listen to the advocates, listen to black residents, listen to their ideas. They are not radical. Actually, they're really reasonable. And then let's take action to get it done.
Andrea Campbell, good luck with your work and happy birthday. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. Thank you.
Thank you.